Okay, just imagine this for a second. Your entire life savings, gone. Cut in half in just a few months. Sounds like a nightmare, right? Well, for millions of people, this isn't some hypothetical scenario. It's their reality. Today, we're diving into one of the most dramatic economic stories happening right now, the collapse of Iran's rial. And that really is the central question here. We're not just talking about your typical market dip. No, this is a catastrophic collapse that has completely upended the lives of millions. So how on earth does a country's currency fall so far, so fast? You know, it'd be easy if there was just one simple answer, but that's not the case here. The truth is, it's like a giant, complex puzzle. There are these powerful forces at play, some from the inside, some from the outside. So let's play detective. Let's start piecing it all together. All right, our first clue takes us outside Iran's borders. See, no country's economy is an island, right? It's all interconnected. And sometimes that connection can turn into this powerful, relentless squeeze from the outside world. So what's the main tool for this external squeeze? It's something you've probably heard of: international sanctions. Now, in simple terms, think of them as financial and trade roadblocks. They're designed to basically cut a country off from the global system, making it incredibly hard to do business with anyone else. Okay, so how exactly do these sanctions hit the rial so hard? Well, it pretty much all comes down to oil. Oil is Iran's main export, and it's sold for US dollars. But sanctions, they choke off that flow of dollars. And when you can't get your hands on the world's main currency, the value of your own currency just plummets. It's basic supply and demand, really. So that's the outside pressure. But now let's turn to our second clue. Because while that squeeze from the outside is huge, it's actually being amplified by some really deep structural problems happening inside the country. These are the cracks from within. And we're not just talking about a random list of issues. No, what's really going on here is this incredibly dangerous self-reinforcing loop. You know, a vicious cycle, where one problem makes another one worse, which then feeds right back into the first one. It just keeps spiraling, accelerating the collapse. So where does this cycle kick off? It starts with the government being strapped for cash, a problem made way worse by those sanctions we talked about. Their short-term fix? Just print more money. But here's the thing. When you flood the economy with cash without creating any real value, you get step 2, massive inflation. Prices for everything skyrocket. And that leads to the final and maybe most critical step. People completely lose confidence in their own currency. I mean, look at it from the perspective of an ordinary citizen. It's a totally rational choice. If the rials in your savings account are buying you less and less every single week, you're not going to just sit there and watch it disappear. You're going to trade it for something that holds its value, a safe haven like the US dollar or gold. But when everyone does that at once, selling rials and buying dollars, it sends the rial's value into an even faster nosedive. Okay, this brings us to our third and final clue. And this one is a little different. It's less about specific policies and numbers and more about, well, the overall atmosphere. Because you have to remember, economies don't just run on spreadsheets. They run on confidence. They run on predictability. So when you have a lot of political tension and nobody really knows what the government's policies are going to be next month, let alone next year, it creates this deep climate of uncertainty. And if there's one thing that money and investment absolutely hate, it's uncertainty. And what's the result of all that uncertainty? Foreign investment just dries up. I mean, why would you risk your capital in a country with such an unpredictable future? And without that investment, there's just no fuel for economic growth. No new jobs, no clear way out of this downward spiral. So there we have it. We've got all our clues on the table. The squeeze from the outside, the cracks forming on the inside, and this whole climate of uncertainty. Now it's time to put the final pieces of the puzzle together and see the complete picture. You know, the most crucial thing to understand here is that there's no single villain in the story. You can't just point to one thing. As one analysis puts it, this is a crisis caused by a combination of forces. It's truly a perfect storm where everything is pushing in the same disastrous direction. So let's recap the whole thing. You've got heavy international sanctions that start the fire by cutting off the supply of dollars. Then you have poor economic decisions at home that pour gasoline on it by printing more and more money, which sparks runaway inflation. This, of course, completely destroys public trust. And this entire crisis is happening under a dark cloud of political uncertainty that just scares away any hope of a real recovery. So the logical conclusion here is pretty clear, right? These aren't just surface-level problems you can patch up with a quick fix. Until these deep, interconnected issues. The sanctions, the inflation, and that broken trust are dealt with at a fundamental level. The immense pressure on the Iranian rial is, well, it's almost certainly going to continue. And all of this leaves us with a final, much bigger question to think about. A currency, at its heart, isn't just paper or coins. It's a social contract. It's built entirely on trust. And this whole story really makes you wonder, when that fundamental trust is broken on such a massive scale, can it ever really be put back together again?